You're probably wondering why I'm doing fighting first instead of fairy, but fairy requires a little bit more testing before I make a tier list video. But for now, we have the fighting type, monotype tier list for you guys today. You know how these tier lists have been doing well on the channel, so I'm going to continue doing it. Like I've said, I'll continue doing it until all types are done for now, at least until before you know, Pokemon Home comes out, and then all of this gets thrown out the window basically. But either way, we're doing fighting type today, and hopefully you guys enjoy this one. So if you guys do, leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more Pokemon content. We are trying to aim our new end of the year goal, or not end of the year goal, end of 2023 goal is 1k subscribers. So we might as well start the grind right now to 100 to 1k subs. So that we have roughly 784 subscribers left. So if you aren't subscribed and you're not part of that 784, please subscribe. Thank you very much. But either way, let's start off with this tier list. I've used fighting a bit. This generation is in a much better place. I even made a video on the fighting type. There's a good amount, there's like a lot of new options that are actually pretty good for the typing, which helps out. And in terms of what Home will bring back, things like Zapdos Galar is going to be pretty cool as well. I can't really think of anything else at the top of my head, but that's one that I'm excited to see do work. But either way, let's start off with our pre-home tier list. So we have Breloom here. Now Breloom, I'm pretty sure, is easily A tier in my opinion. Breloom is so solid for the type, because you have access to Spore. Spore just does a lot against a lot of teams. Obviously, like Grass isn't in a particularly good spot in the meta, so most of the time Spore is pretty free. You can Spore something, you know, you have SD, you finally have Close Combat now as, you know, a reliable fighting stab option. So SD Breloom is a pretty solid win con now, which is actually pretty scary. Breloom also has a pretty solid matchup against water-based, water-type, mono-type teams, and the fact that you can just spam Bullet Seed or, you know, basically threaten everything on water is pretty solid for fighting to have. Other than that, like, Breloom is obviously held back. He's not a bulky Pokemon by any means. It is pretty slow, and you kind of like, you're pretty much forced to run like Sash or Life Orb to really make the best of it. And I do prefer Sash a lot, because obviously Breloom doesn't have the bulk. You can obviously threaten things out. You know, they might want to try and kill you in one hit, but obviously you're Sash, so you take the hit. Like a Flutter Mane Moonblast, obviously you live that with Sash, and then you just kill it with Bullet Seed if you get enough hits. So yeah, Breloom is definitely a pretty good Pokemon on fighting. Not one that's a necessary component on fighting teams, but definitely a solid Pokemon. Crabominable here, definitely an unranked. This one is not good. it's as simple as that. There's no reason to use this one whatsoever. It might hit hard. Iron Fist boosts Ice Hammer for some reason or another, but it's still not enough to make this one work. It's too slow. Not bulky at all. The typing is awful defensively. Fighting already struggles somewhat with lack of useful resistances. I guess fighting's most useful resistance right now is a dark, which is actually pretty useful, but outside of that, fighting isn't known for being a good defensive typing. But adding an ice type onto that, no, we're not doing that around here. But yeah, Crabominable's like has like no niche. Like, you'd think a slow wall breaker that actually does good damage is actually like nice, but even then, Iron Hands has a higher attack stat and can pull off SD, is a lot more bulkier. Like, there's no reason to use Crab. Really, like, it's even slower than Ting Lu. Like, you have to run speed investment, like a slight speed investment to even outspeed Ting Lu. Do you know how crazy that is? Ting Lu is base 45 speed, and Crab is at base 43. Like, do you know how disappointing and sad that is? But yeah, Crab is definitely unranked, no doubt about that. Phalanx, it's tough for me to say Phalanx. Like, I don't know, I might have to make another tier. Like, I really don't know. Oh, I don't even really need that. I'll put Phalanx in unranked, all things considered. There's, like, it might sound nice to use, but, like, it's a mono fighting type, and we have a decent amount of those. Like, we have the regular Tauros Paldean, we have Persimmon, and, yeah, and we have Phalanx. But, like, Phalanx is probably the worst out of all of them, easily. And, yeah, there's no reason to really use Phalanx. It's just a case of, like, what is this one really offering? Like, no retreat sounds like a decent move until you face like a Scarf Flutter Mane and you know, you can't swap out and you just sack your Phalanx. Like, well, I don't even think, actually, Phalanx is base 75 speed. Is that faster than Fluttermane, naturally, like, I have to think about that for a second because there might be a case to run no retreat, but at the same time, four on that, so it is faster than Fluttermane. So I guess that's something, but at the same time, if you face a faster Scarfer and you're chipped, you can't swap out and you basically have to sack your Phalanx. And I'm just like, this one is so reliant on its ability, on its move no retreat to actually, you know, be worth something. It's just not worth it in the long run at all, to be honest. And yeah, there's just better fighting types to use. Like, fighting type has, like, the majority of these Pokemon are physical attackers, and what Phalanx is offering, like, there's just better setup conditions, better win cons to use, e.g. Hawlucha, even something like Bulk Up Tauros, you know, SD Quaquaval, and stuff like that. But yeah, Phalanx is definitely unranked. Flamigo, I'm gonna put Flamigo in C because there's a case, like, it's hanging on the balance between C and unranked. I'm not gonna lie. I might just have to make a Flamigo tier because, yeah, I might just have to make a Flamigo tier. We'll call it Flamigo because I don't think it's unranked, but putting it in C where I'm going to be putting some of the rest of these Pokemon, or specifically certain Pokemon, I'm just like, yeah. Because realistically, Hawlucha is the better Flamigo. You know, you have Unburden, you have SD, and stuff like that. But Flamigo doesn't really have that much, but it's not a shitter. Like, it's not a Crabominable level, and it's not Phalanx level. It actually has a speed tier. It actually has decent attack stat. Obviously, I'll unrank Flamigo when Zapdos Galar comes into the picture, but right now, it deserves zone tier at this point. Gallade is interesting because a lot of people hype up Gallade, especially because of the buff that I got with Sharpness, which basically boosts slicing moves like Psycho Cut and Leaf Blade and all of that stuff. But I still think Gallade falls into the issues that it's always had for the past, you know, 5 generations. Its speed tier is average as hell. It's not particularly bulky, and it doesn't really have any way of, like, boosting its speed outside of, like, agility, I believe. But, like, you're obviously running out of space if you decide to run agility. Like, there's probably more case to run agility nowadays because you actually have a decent boost to your stab options now. Particularly, you have Sacred Sword, which is stronger than CC, and you have Psycho Car as well. So you have reliable stab options now, and you also have Knockoff, Leaf Blade as decent coverage. So I could argue agility is a decent set, but again, Gallade outside of that still has its same issues that I don't think puts at the top of it doesn't even put an A tier in my opinion. Like, it's definitely the best one in B, depending on what else I place in B. But Gallade is definitely at the top of B. I can respect its damage output. Scarf is a decent set, and yeah, Great Tusk. Oh god, I love Great Tusk. This one easily goes into A. The roll compression it gives fighting is insane. The bulk it gives fighting is insane. Ground fighting. It's pretty decent defensively as well. You're an electric immunity. You know, you times 4 resist rock, so you're not taking any damage trying to switch in. You know, to remove hazards, unless there's obviously like spikes up. But you know, Great Tusk does its job pretty well. It has knockoff to punish, you know, spin blockers. It has ground stab. Like, it doesn't care about Goldengo in the slightest. Like, this is a spinner that doesn't give a single crap about Goldengo. You either EQ onto the switch or you knock off. Like there's no point of trying to spin block Great Tusk with a Goldengo because it's just gonna kill it. And also Ghost gets punished by knockoff. Like, it does its job perfectly. It has huge bulk. Like it's just so good at what it does. It would be weird for me not to put Great Tusk in S tier. It's just so splashable, and it should be on every fighting team, to be honest. Like, in terms of removal options, like, it's either Great Tusk or default Hawlucha. Like, make your choice, please. It's definitely S tier. Hariyama, tough for me to say, but probably another unranked here, honestly. It's Iron Hands is the better Pokemon, and you know, Hariyama really has nothing going for it that Iron Hands really wants. I guess Iron Hands would appreciate knockoff and potentially bullet punch, but that, like, they basically have identical move pools, and you know, Hariyama has a less HP stat, also has less special defense. I'm pretty sure it has less defense as well. Like, it's honestly just worse Iron Hands at this point. And the only thing that Hariyama actually has going for it that Iron Hands can't replicate is, like, Guts. But Heracross has Guts. Like, it's not even needed. But in terms of defensive utility, I suppose there's Thick Fat, which makes fire and ice resistance. But you don't really need an ice resistance on a fighting team. You also have Tauros, Paldean, Water and Fire to handle ice types. Like, Hariyama's niche is not needed for that whatsoever. So, easily unranked. Hawlucha, easily A tier as well. Unburden, SD is a solid win con. Like when Halucha has Unburden, literally nothing can revenge kill it. And at that point, the things that could potentially revenge kill it, like Scarf Main, all of those sort of Pokemon just kinda, die to whatever Halucha does. Like the amount of games that can basically just be won by Halucha on his own, assuming it gets off like a SD and then it's like White Herb CC or something like that. It's pretty hard to stop once it gets going. It's also pretty quick. And it's a flying type, so it offers a ground immunity which is somewhat helpful against fire, and seeing how you're running Pokemon like Iron Hands, potentially Tauros Fire, and and Pawmot as well. So having that ground immunity is pretty solid. So Hawlucha is definitely a A tier Pokemon. Heracross, probably have to put Heracross in B. Definitely not a staple on fighting as it is on bug. Like I said in the bug tier list that Heracross is one of Bug's best Pokemon because like in terms of speed control options you really don't have much to go off of, and Heracross has 85 base speed, which is enough to outspeed Pokemon like Fluttermane and Dragapult after a Scarf. So Heracross is pretty solid, decent late game win con as well with Moxie, but outside of that you're not really using Heracross for anything else. Guts is too slow, too frail. These slow breakers aren't really in, season right now. Offense is just too strong. Like, slow breakers have always struggled against offense-based metas because if you're not that fast, then you're pretty vulnerable to faster things that can actually check you. Like, why would I want to use Guts Heracross, which forces in things like Fluttermane or, Dragapult? Like, Heracross does not have the bulk to take any of like these really fast attackers, so you're just better off going with a Choice Scarf set. And it actually does have strong moves as well: Mega Horn, CC, Stone Edge, Throat Chop for ghost types, EQ if you want to use that. So yeah, Gallade is definitely better though. Glade's damage output is a lot more scarier. I feel like Sharpness really adds things. It doesn't have any unreliable moves. Like pretty much Glade has 100% accurate moves at all times. Psycho Cut doesn't miss, Sacred Sword doesn't miss, Knockoff doesn't miss, Leaf Blade doesn't miss, Night Slash doesn't miss. Like Heracross can actually just screw you over if it misses Mega Horn. So there's things like that. Also with Stone Edge, yeah. But yeah, definitely beat it. Iron Hands. I don't think Iron Hands is as necessary as it is on. I don't think Iron Hands is S tier like Great Tusk, but it's definitely one of the top Pokemon in A for the sole reason that you're able to check like insane special attackers with an Assault Vest set. Like Iron Hands with like max per def investment with an Assault Vest can like fails to get to it killed by Fluttermane's Moonblast as long as it's not Specs, of course. Do you know how insane that is? This mon's bulk is insane. I've talked about it in the Electric video, of course, that like Iron Hands is definitely one of Electric's best Pokemon, and the same applies to fighting as well. His bulk is insane. Being able to handle things like Fluttermane, potential Psychic Pokemon like Hatterene as well. Just being able to take those strong special attacks from types that obviously fighting has no business taking attacks from, like Psychic and Fairy. Specifically those two, like Iron Hands being able to threaten those guys as well because it has 140 attack, so it actually hits relatively hard. Like wow, the usefulness of Iron Hands on fighting cannot be understated whatsoever. But yeah, Iron Valiant, another A tier Pokemon to be honest. Set versatility is a big thing. I think in like fighting, to be honest, and being fighting's like only consistent special attacker, you could argue. Obviously Lucario exists, but Lucario has his own issues that I'll be speaking about right after Iron Valiant. But being fighting's most consistent special attacker is something that can't be understated. 120 special attack, hits really hard. You also have 130 attack. Like you can really go mix Iron Valiant. You can go special Iron Valiant with like Choice Specs or Choice Scarf. Choice Scarf is a pretty solid speed control option for fighting because base 116 speed is faster than a good amount. So Choice Scarf there would be pretty nice. It's 2 points slower than Hawlucha, so the speed is there, and I think that's what Iron Valiant can really offer fighting in terms of like there's a lot of really slow Pokemon like outside of Hawlucha, Iron Valiant. Like these are literally the top 2 fastest Pokemon that fighting has access to. So running them as speed control options, or specifically in Valiant's case, obviously running the Choice Scarf, that would be pretty nice for it. So yeah, Valiant is definitely one of the best Pokemon. If you use fighting, you definitely want to have an Iron Valiant on your team. Now Lucario, now I would say in early meta when people weren't really testing too much stuff. Like obviously this was an offensive check to Flutter Main because you have access to Bullet Punch, which obviously Oku's Flutter Main. But at the same time, people have also realized Iron Hand with an Assault Vest is a decent, you know, stopgap to Flutter Main going ham. You have things like Halucha, Scarf, Gallade, Heracross. As long as Flutter Main isn't Scarf, you would have to obviously try and scout that out with the Iron Hands. But either way, like Lucario's niche of like offensively checking Flutter Main isn't as important as we once thought it was. So where do I think Lucario places now? Now, this thing has Swords Dance E-Speed, which obviously without Terror isn't as crazy as it sounds, but at the same time, it's a decent, you know, win con, I suppose. But other Pokemon can pull it off better, I feel. Like, if you want to go SD, I guess you have like SD Valiant, I suppose, as long as you kind of have like a special attacker, which would probably be Lucario or something. But yeah, same issues with Gallade and Heracross, all things considered. I believe that, you know, Lucario is just a bit too slow. It is faster than these two, which I can kind of respect, and I would probably put Lucario above them. But at the same time, I don't know, like, it just has a lot of issues. It can't really switch in that much, despite being a steel type Pokemon and having a multitude of useful resistances such as ice, you know, normal, rock. It doesn't really switch in well, and that's kind of a shame really, because that defensive typing would be pretty nice to use if it actually had a decent amount of bulk. But yeah, Lucario is an average Pokemon, I feel, not one that you want to be using too much on fighting. I don't think is really the best option you could be running, but you know, some people have made it work. You know, still threatening Flutter Main offensively is you know, with priority bullet punch is something that you kind of have to respect. And then things like that. Special can even try and tech bullet punch, to be honest, because I think letting Flutter Main in, which is one of like fighting's toughest matchups, is definitely something you can get around with that. But at least in the fairy matchup, Lucario steel typing does come in a bit clutch, which definitely makes me think of Lucario more highly than Heracross and Gallade, for example. Medicham, interesting. A lot of people, like, obviously it's comparable and relative to Gallade. Obviously they have the same exact speed tier. They don't hit as hard as each other. Like Medicham obviously hits harder, you know, pure power doubling its attack stat. So you're probably wondering, why do people say Gallade is better than Medicham? Now, it's pretty simple. It comes down to Gallade's coverage, especially with sharpness now. Like, Gallade has knockoff. Gallade basically gets stab on Leaf Blade. Gallade gets stab on Night Slash. You know, it has Sacred Sword, which obviously doesn't drop its defenses. And it has Psycho Cut, which it can run a lot more than Zen Headbutt now. Like, Medicham basically has to run Zen Headbutt to, you know, keep up consistent damage on the psychic side of things. But Gallade can run Psycho Cut, which ends up being stronger than Zen Headbutt. Doesn't care about Rocky Helmet. Doesn't care about, you know, static or flame body from, you know, things like Talon Flame or something like that. But Medicham has to worry about all those things, and obviously it's less consistent in the long run. But I do honestly prefer using Medicham though, because it does obviously hit harder and stuff like that. But yeah, Gallade's coverage obviously just etches out slightly. But yeah, they're basically the same Pokemon pretty much. They can essentially run the same sets, but obviously Gallade also has ST, which is relatively hard to set up, all things considered, but that is an option that Medicham does not have access to. But yeah, I would say he's better than Heracross as well, in my opinion. But yeah, Persimmon, here comes the C tier. You're probably wondering, I've not been filling up the C tier too much, but Persimmon's our first C tier Pokemon. Now, why would I want to use Persimmon? Please give me such a good explanation on why I would want to use Persimmon. Because Gallade is a psychic fighting type, which has the same speed tier, which has coverage options like knockoff. Like, the only thing that Persimmon has going for it is like a Scarfer that has U-turn, like, and knockoff, which is pretty decent, all things considered. Flamigo has U-turn, but it doesn't have knockoff. But it also has flying stab. Like, it's hard to really argue Persimmon's place on a fighting team, and I doubt you ever really considered using Persimmon. It's not unranked trash, because these guys are just completely outclassed. There's no way around that whatsoever. Like Hariyama, why use it? Iron Hands exists. Phalanx is fucking Phalanx, and Crabominable is just awful. So Persimmon at least has a unique niche for itself, but at the same time it's really, you know, close with things like Medicham and Gallade, because they're base 80 Pokemon. They have dual stab that Persimmon doesn't have access to, and especially in Gallade's case, like Gallade has knockoff. Like, the only thing that Gallade doesn't have that. Persimmon has his U-turn, so make that as you will, but it's easily C tier in my opinion. Now onto Pawmot. Pawmot is interesting because Revival Blessing is like it's still a controversial move, all things considered. Like I mentioned it in the electric video, stacking Iron Hands plus Pawmot on the same team is kind of annoying to deal with, but it's hard to say. I wouldn't put in S tier because I don't think it's as necessary. I've used many fighting teams without Revival Blessing Pawmot, and it's just the issue of Pawmot itself that when you run the Pokemon, you're pretty much forced into this ideology that, oh, I have to run Revival Blessing on this Pokemon or else it's just kind of bad. And I do have to say that using Revival Blessingless Pawmot, like Pawmot on his own isn't actually that bad of a Pokemon. Like it has 115 attack and 105 speed. Like it's doing a lot more than these guys in terms of speed tier and can actually threaten certain Pokemon with Iron Fist, Thunder Punch and stuff like that. But at the same time, like it's just a Revival Blessing bot, and I feel like the lack of people actually using this Pokemon properly makes it like a thing where it's not splashable, because you know you're basically sacking them on every time you want to use Revival Blessing, and it's so telegraphed and stuff like that. And outside of that, it doesn't offer like insane damage like Medicham. You're not necessarily using a Choice Scarf like you would on Heracross, and I don't know, it just takes up a slot sometimes that I'd rather be using anything else. So you know, Pawmot is not a bad Pokemon. Obviously Revival Blessing really makes it, you know, this high, but at the same time, if it didn't even have Revival Blessing, it would still relatively potentially be A, or it might be at the top of B, in my opinion. But yeah, that's what I'm Pawmot. Quaquaval, interesting. I have to put this in A. It's definitely at the bottom of A. I'm just gonna have to reorder this slightly because, yeah, I think this is okay for A. But yeah, Quaquaval is definitely at the bottom of A. For the reason that, obviously, it's a spinner. It's the secondary spinner, or other than Great Tusk. So, other than that, since obviously Great Tusk is fulfilling the rapid spin niche, what does Quaquaval really offer? Well, it's a decent Scarfer. It's faster than these three, and it has Aqua Step to boost its speed even more. Obviously, it has huge snowballing potential with Moxie, like Heracross, but obviously, I feel like Quaquaval is obviously better than Heracross at that Moxie thing, because if you get to a point where you just spam Aqua Step, then it's pretty much impossible to revenge Quaquaval that has a Scarf and an Aqua Step boost. And then you get Moxie, the Mon is pretty strong. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty good. All three of the stars are pretty good on their respective typings. Obviously, you'll see Quaquaval have a lot more praise in the water video, because obviously it's the secondary spinner to Great Tusk on Fire and Water, where like the only other hazard removal option is Tatsugiri. Obviously, I'm gonna have to be singing Quaquaval's praises a lot more when that video comes. Sliverwing. Sliverwing is... I feel like Sliverwing has fallen from grace slightly, because in the boost energy meta, I would easily say this thing was at like near the top of A. Like this thing was insane with boost energy, but without it now, I feel like it's kind of lost in what it wants to do, really. Like, I never feel like I want to use Sliverwing that much, just because the speed tier is average. It does have decent bulk on the Spadef side, but I don't know, it's a first impression machine as well, but I don't know. I don't want to say it's B tier, because I really think it's better than these guys. And I would probably have to put in like A, but it's probably the worst Pokemon in A in my opinion, because I don't know. Outside of first impression, I just don't feel like this one has too much of an impact. It's either forced out because of its average speed tier, or it kind of just clicks like banded first impression, and then obviously you kind of have to swap out because you can't click first impression twice. So there's things like that. So I don't know, like, is it a better Scarfer than Heracross? Arguably hard to say. Like, you really have to compare it to Heracross, because they're both bug fighting types. They both, like, this thing has U-turn. That kind of makes a big difference, now that I think about it. U-turn makes a big difference. So yeah, Sliverwing is definitely an A, but definitely the worst Pokemon in A. Now onto the Tauroses. Now, the Paldean Tauroses, I'll do them all at the same time, obviously. The The regular Tauros definitely in C. Like this thing is kind of bad. It's worse than the other two by far. Taurus Paldea Fire definitely in A tier. This one is pretty solid in my opinion. Being a fire type means you're neutral to fairy. That's enough for me. You know, Raging Bull obviously breaks screens that fairy type teams use. Also breaks screens that dark type teams use, and Taurus just kind of does wonders against them. Wonders against them, I swear. So there's that as well. You have Intimidate, which is a pretty strong ability. All three of them have Intimidate, but I feel like Taurus Fire takes advantage of that the most because it also has access to Will-O-Wisp. So you pull off the bulky role the best out of the Tauruses because you obviously can cripple physical attackers. You can also cripple them even more with your abilities. So it's easily one of the best here. The water one, on the other hand, I would say is in B tier. Probably like lower than Gallade in my opinion because like you already have Kokevo as a water fighting type, and then you know Fire Taurus is doing a better job than you, but at least you still have a decent damage output. Water fighting isn't the best like dual stab offensively. Firefighting is definitely stronger, and Kokevo still pulls that off better because of Moxie, Aqua Step. But yeah, this one is still decent, just not one I would consider running on fighting too much. But the fact that this one is just useless. Mono fighting typing is just useless. Like Persimmon has more of a niche than it because obviously this is taking up a Taurus slot that you could be using for the fire one. But Persimmon, you know, still has that Scarf niche that I mentioned earlier with knock off U-turn and all of that good stuff. And finally, Toxicroak. Now Toxicroak is another interesting one. It's tough because I don't think he's on the same level as the guys in B. Like I feel like I could use the guys in B and I would have a good time, but when I would use Toxicroak, I feel like I would really have to try and make this one be successful. So I'll definitely have to say he's in C tier. I'm not gonna lie, Toxicroak has not shown me anything to be really too, you know, impressed with. To be honest, like it doesn't really fit a Scarfer role well, so its average speed tier is obviously shown to be a lot worse. Like especially when you're not boosting it. Its damage out, it has CC now, so its damage output is a bit better on the physical side, particularly with an SD set because you have two high power stab moves in Gunk Shot and CC, but at the same time, there's just better options. I guess like there is just better options. Kokevo can pull off SD, Brelin can pull off SD, Iron Valiant can pull off SD, even Iron Hands could potentially pull off SD if you're not running Assault Vest, which frankly I don't recommend, but there's still that option. I don't know, Toxicroak isn't really appealing to me well at all. Even as a special attacker, like Lucario does a better job and also Iron Valiant, so Toxicroak's niche isn't as strong as it is, but it's definitely a better Pokemon, I believe, than Persimmon and regular Tauros Paldea. But yeah, that is it for the fighting tier list. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with this tier list. I think this is pretty accurate. There's a lot of A-rank Pokemon in fighting, as you can see. Like a lot of these Pokemon are really good for the type, and you know, you definitely should be using all of these Pokemon on the team if you can. The B tier mons, like, you could argue Gallade is A. Maybe some people will disagree that I say Gallade's B tier, but it's definitely like Gallade is definitely pretty good here. I'll put Gallade above Lucario actually. Yeah, using these guys and Gallade, you could argue, yeah, that's a pretty good team. These guys, like, this is niche, this is Flamigo, and then this is just garbage. And then these guys are just kind of average Pokemon. But yeah, thanks for watching again, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.